Oh yeah, let's roll into Loudoun County now. So you thought about it. Who planted this bug in your head to go, hey, Mike, you spent all this time being a federal agent. Now let's bring you back to your roots, back when you were a real cop, back when you were in Howard County.
So when I was in California, I got a job offer from Booz Allen. So as you know, Booz Allen's a a pretty good strategic firm there, and they actually came in and were going to pay pretty much what I was already making, as a DEA agent out there in California. So yeah, I talked to a financial advisor, and you're looking at retirement. You're looking, well, it's like, okay, this is a pretty good offer. It's just too good an offer to turn down. So I ended up taking a job back here on the East Coast, and my wife, in the meantime, had done the research on this area. We didn't really, when I was in headquarters before, I lived in Stafford.
Oh, that was a drive.
Oh yeah, that was it was awful for me to get to the office. And I mean, honestly, in public affairs, the hours were like off the charts. So generally I would leave the house about 5:15 in the morning, mostly to beat the traffic and get on the HOV lanes. But by the time I got there, I mean, I tried to get a quick workout in, and then I had to go back. And back then, you didn't have all these, you couldn't pull the articles like on the computer like you can now every single day. Everything was done in paper. So I would actually have to cut the articles out and paste them on every morning. Like we had like 6 or 7 papers. We had the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Washington Post, LA Times. So I'd have to cut out any articles that were related to drugs or DEA or anything like that, and put them on every morning on a sheet. And I remember Bill Bryant, who ended up being the superintendent under ASA out there in Arkansas State Police. He would always kid me about cutting paper dolls in the morning. Yeah. So I'd be cutting these articles, I'd be pasting them, and then of course everybody on the 12th floor and everybody on the 11th floor started wanting. So I'd have to run these copies. I had like 40 or 50 pages of articles, and I'd be running these copies like all morning long to try to get them to. So it was just it was just so much work to get that done. So but anyway, when I went out to, so I went to California, I came back and I got this job at Booz Allen, and as a subject matter expert. And when I was there, Pete Montessor, so you probably know Pete, right?
Yeah, very well.
Yeah. So Pete had come on at the same time. Now my wife had stayed back to finish the school year. I took the job like in November of 2008 to kind of get my feet wet, get things going, and then to purchase a house before they could come out when the school year ended. So I was actually staying with my in-laws in Rockville, Maryland, and I'd actually thought about Maryland probably for about 30 seconds, and I said, no, it's going to be Virginia.
So no offense against Maryland, but they rank 50th on the list of states for best places to retire.
Yeah, so I looked and I was like, I mean, I grew up in Maryland, I like Maryland, but I was like, nah, not at this stage of my life. So, but we didn't really want to go to Stafford, because when I looked at, telling you the stories about having to get up and then, get up to work early and then to spend, I mean, honestly, it's like, you're trying to clock out at like 6:30 at night, and all of a sudden you get the call from, a call comes in from Miami. Hey, we had a couple agents that got charged with or got in trouble for this or that. I'm like, oh my God, here we go. So the hours were exhausting. And then that commute was just awful to Stafford. It was awful. So we figured, let's look at Loudoun County. Low crime rate, good reputation for schools. So we decided to come
until recently. We'll talk about that.
I know we're going to get into that. So we decide it's going to be Loudoun County, and then I'm like the first week or so I'm in Booz Allen, and Pete Montessor had come on at the same time that I did, and they were just starting to try to expand their reach in the drug enforcement area there in the DOJ market. And Pete was like, he knew of me, I knew of him, but he actually knew a little bit more about me than I thought he did. And he was like, hey, Mike, you ought to think about it. If you're coming here, you ought to think about running for sheriff. And I said, why is that? He goes, because in Loudoun County, they don't have a police department. They've got a sheriff's office, and the sheriff handles everything. I said, you're kidding me. So I looked at it, And I actually did about a year's worth of research to see whether or not this was something that could be done. I looked at the kind of money that Simpson was bringing in. I looked at his how he factored it out in previous elections. I looked at what the competition looked like in the past. Did about a year's worth of research, and I remember talking to this one gal in particular who knew a lot about politics here. She was like the expert in Loudoun County, and she says to me, I remember talking to her, about 4 months before I announced. And she says to me, she said, let me ask something. She got a really good background. She says, how long you lived in Loudoun County for? And I said, about a year. And she says, who do you know? And I said, nobody. And she says, how much money do you have? And I said, none. She says, I don't think I'd be running if
that sounds like a plan to me. There's a good plan for running for sheriff. I've been doing a lot of research and talking to a lot of people. And generally, when you're running for office, you get a lot of advice. And about 90% of it's not good. However, working at Booz Allen, there was a lot of smart people there. I'm like, and some people that had run campaigns, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I can get that. I understand that. So I was actually getting good advice. I was getting good free advice. So I figured out, now let me see if I can do this. And I announced, not knowing whether I could do it or not. And my wife, because her dad had just been diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer right about the time I had announced. And it was like, oh God, all these things are hitting us at once. Mm-hmm. And then she said, and the deal that we had was that, look, she said, we don't have the money for you to run. So, as soon as you're out of money, I said, as soon as I'm out of money, I'm out of the race. And so I do a fundraiser. I get like $1,500. And then we do some postcards and some bumper stickers or whatever, and it'd be gone. And I go, you're back to cutting out things and pasting them on things and mailing them out.
Well, it does teach you to be pretty innovative here. So we end up, so I figured, like, well, I guess I'm out. I ran out of money, and then I get like another $500 contribution. I'd be, well, I guess I'm back in. And so we had these people that were all the people that were with me were all volunteers. So we had a volunteer campaign, and it actually we were able to pull it together. We're able to fight off all the other. They put people up against me, the Republican Party, because I was a new kid on the block. So I don't think they wanted me. Certainly, Democrats didn't want me. So you talk about being a real outsider and being the new kid on the block. I didn't spend 20 years dropping lit or anything like that. So I had to kind of make my arguments pretty much myself, and had a very solid team that was helping me through it all. So it all worked out, and surprisingly, I got the nomination. I had to defeat three in a primary for the nomination. Then I had to defeat 2 others in the general election, which I did. And
because I think, if I remember right, Steve ran as an independent in that election, didn't he?
He did. He decided he made a mistake of sending out an emissary to meet me when he knew I was thinking about doing this, and said that he was going to run as an independent. I was like, okay, well, that leaves the Republican ticket wide open. Yep. And then the Republicans, like I said, they knew I had they put a local guy up against me who had local credentials, and then they put a FBI guy, a retired FBI guy, I guess, because he had federal credentials. And then, of course, you had Ron Speakman, who was just he passed away a couple of years ago, but that guy was just kind of off the charts. There's always somebody.
Oh, I remember him. Yeah.
He's the one that sent a pretty vulgar picture to a gal that he knew he'd met the night before. And that made it to the Washington Post. So that story made not the photo, but the story made it to the Washington Post.
Yeah, but there's no, as you know, in your position, there's no such thing as bad press. There's just press, right? At least he got his name out.
Well, he did. But I remember, so Pastor Gary Hamrick, he held a forum there, and I just remember going to the forum, and it was me, Simpson, and this guy Ron Speakman, and he it was kind of like when Jay Leno interviewed Hugh Grant. It was like, what the heck were you thinking? So it was a pretty interesting way to start the conversation, start the forum. But anyway, so I get the nomination, win the election, and then all of a sudden I got this organization that's.
Mike, I got to interrupt you for a second. I wanted to pull up an article. December of 2011. Loudoun Sheriff candidate Ron Speakman has eventful past. That's the headline of the story.
Yeah. Yeah, so he would always tell people he had a colorful background there. Yeah, but he was. I remember him meeting with me. We had coffee, and he was trying to get me to get out of the race. And he told me that the job paid a lot less than it did. And he was trying to get me to get out. And he was actually, at the time, he was going to get fired, I think, from the Leesburg Police Department. And it's a long story behind that, but it looked to me like he was going to get terminated. So he quit and he became a mortgage broker, and he was dealing a lot of subprimes. If you know, or if you remember back in that 2008, 2009 time period when the economy tanked, a lot of it had to do with subprime mortgages. And I remember meeting with him at the IHOP, and he says, he's like, you're not right for this job, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, what makes you think you're right for the job? He goes, well, I was 8 years a Leesburg cop. And I said, well, I got, whatever the time, like 25, 30 years in law enforcement. I've been all over the globe, and he goes, yeah, because, but I'd be better because I know the area. And I said, Ron, I said, you're a subprime mortgage broker. And he says, no, I'm a mortgage broker. I said, let me ask you something. I said, do you sell subprime mortgages? And he goes, yeah. And I said, that makes you a subprime mortgage broker. So he never
easy
took it
definition.
like that, but
Murph, I got to read one paragraph from this story. This is the candidate they put up against him. While married with 2 children, then Officer Speakman launched an affair with a woman named Marty Miller, who also married with a child. Subsequent divorce, which Loudoun County found judge they committed adultery. Anyway, she got charged for selling a house full of personal property while her husband was out of the country. Well, anyway, they get divorced. She and Speakman bought a house together in Springfield, and in 1993, Miller shot Speakman in the side with a .38 caliber revolver. Now, something like that's usually a serious crime. You can always tell what the court thought about it by the sentence. There was some weird shit going on. That's all I can say. She talked about being abused, but the end result was Miller was given a 1-year sentence, completely suspended, and spent not a day in jail for shooting Speakman. What does that tell you about the facts of the case?
So he was actually married at the time, and that was his girlfriend he was living with, and he was messing around with another girl. So he got shot by the girlfriend of whatever. I mean, it was like a three-way thing going on there. And actually, I went and I read before I ran again. When we were running against each other, I went down and looked at the court documents on that. And there's a lot more, even more to that story that I have to tell you offline here. That the family docket there that kind of details some other things that you might find shocking. And I'm like, my God, this guy's he's got the stones to run for an office like this with this kind of a background. It was amazing, but he was one, and like I said, I had to beat 3 in a primary. Then he decided to run as an independent, and Steve ran as an independent, which kind of helped because it kind of helped split the vote. Yeah, and I won pretty resoundingly with 52%, I think, at that go round. So it was pretty
well. And your percentages have gotten
54.18%.
Oh, well.
Oh, okay.
Math was Steve's strong suit, apparently. Yeah. Which was your percentages have gotten better. Well, let's focus in a little bit on Loudoun County, because while Loudoun County is famous for a lot of things, like they've been in several movies, several episodes. Like I know one of the new Law and Order things on organized crime, Loudoun County, a data center, kind of made it, but it wasn't really Loudoun County, but a lot of interesting things. But I got to tell you, so I'm prefacing this by telling you a story about, I was in San Antonio, Texas, speaking at a big conference down there. 5:00 in the morning, I'm getting a ride back to the airport. And the lady's very nice, one of the Lyft drivers. She goes, so where are you from? I said, I'm Northern Virginia. She goes, where? She goes, Loudoun County. Oh, Loudoun County. She knew what was everywhere I go. People have heard. Look, that's part of what I want to talk about. There's some big challenges in Loudoun County. Some of this was with the issues with the school board, with what happened in Stonebridge High School, where my kids went to. We've talked about fentanyl. So let's kind of dive into some of the stuff. And I want to work up to that part. That's kind of the coup de grace we'll start with. But I know when you started too, Frank Wolf, I think, was still member of Congress.
That's right.
Yeah. And you guys focused a lot on gangs. What's the gang issue like in Loudoun County now, from when you started to what we're looking at now?
The gang issue is we have very few problems with gangs here in Loudoun County.
I can't tell you the last time I heard the name MS-13, even though they're prevalent in many areas.
Yeah, in the first couple of years I was on the job, we had a 16-year-old named Santana who was killed down there at a bus stop because he wouldn't join. He wouldn't join one of the gangs, and then you had he was killed by the gangbangers. I don't know if it was MS-13 or 18th Street. I think it was MS-13. And then you had another fatal stabbing about a year and a half later with one of the gang members that he was in a ravine there in Ashburn. And aside from that, quite frankly, I would say, Morgan, the reason that we're pretty much ahead of the game on this is because, knock on wood, I mean, we have a very, very robust school resource officer program. So our people, our deputies that are in these schools, they get to know who the gangbangers are. They get to know the problem kids are. They get to know the problem parents are. They get to know who the problem teachers are. You know, we get to know, we get good relationships with the administration and all that. So what we're able to do is kind of head off this stuff in advance before it becomes too major of a problem. And so we've been able to do that. We actually had in Dominion High School, the last incident that we had that had anything to do with a gangbanger, I recall, was this one gangbanger who decided in the cafeteria to assault his principal, and then he assaulted his teacher. And our SO shows up, and this guy is built like a brick house, man. And he used to, you know, be a boxer and all that kind of stuff. So he goes over to try to punch our guy, and our guy just pops him, and the kid goes down. And of course, the video that comes out on the iPhone is just our guy taking a shot at him, you know. So we quickly get the entire footage of the cafeteria and immediately put that out so everybody could see, like, hey, wait a minute, this wasn't just our guy hitting this guy. This guy had already assaulted his principal. He'd already assaulted his teacher, and he was just working his way to our deputy. And so anyway, that was one of those things where, you know, you talk about working very closely with your media people and all that, and working closely with the schools. We were able to quickly grab that footage, get it right out there. And the narrative that they were trying to push, like, you know, SRO assaults a 15-year-old or whatever, killed it like right off the bat, you know. And that was really about the last thing I can remember that really had anything to do with any of our gangbangers. And that was just really a stupid kid thinking he could take on our school resource officer. So but we really have been very, very fortunate. I mean, I had a good relationship with Frank Wolf and certainly Barbara Comstock. Jennifer Wexon hasn't called me once in the 3 years or so she's been in office there. It's kind of amazing, you know, how politicized things have become. I mean, I don't care. I mean, I've met with our Democrat senators or state senators and delegates and stuff like that. Not a single phone call. And I tried to call her when she won the election, and she never called back. And I was like, man. And then in 3 or 4 years now, she's never called me once to ask what's going on, how they can help, anything about safe streets. Nothing. Get nothing from her, which is, it's a shame, you know. But the thing is that we've got such a good agency. We're doing so well with handling things like that. It's almost like it's not an issue. I know, Hung Cat, when he was running against her, was it's almost, because if you look nationally, you look at crime nationally, you'll see how bad it is nationally with all the things that are going on in these cities and all the murders, all the things that are going on. And you look at Loudoun County, and our crime rate since 2012. It's actually come down 47% since I've been in office. So it's not, you can't really use this area here as leverage in a political campaign and say, look, our crime's going up, because Loudoun County, it's not.
No, it's not. Yeah. I got to tell you, as a detective, I worked more homicides in a year than your sheriff's office did. and you guys were 10 times the size of our county. And that's, I mean, it's just like, it's a testament to the area, because you got to realize Loudoun County, we've got Dulles Airport. You've got the confluence of all the defense contractors. You know, I just thought of one other thing I'm going to ask you about a little bit later. It's going to be the Metro. But we've got all of these things happening. But look, so gangs kind of did that thing. But when did the rise of fentanyl start getting on your radar? Because, you know, we had Derek on, and we talked about the poisonings, because I think there's a difference between overdose and poisonings. Right. And these are poisonings. I remember too, and it was one of the kids here in Loudoun County, and I think you guys made a case on the people who supplied it to him. I think they lived down by Aldi. You remember the young man? He had just gotten out of rehab, went to a party, was given a pill, and then died. Mm-hmm. Right. Pretty affluent family. I mean, the estate but this kid had just gotten out of rehab. Somebody gave him a pill, one pill, right, and the kid died.
We've had some luck working with the Eastern District U.S. Attorney's Office there and the DEA certainly in prosecuting some of these cases, getting Title 21 charges. If we can, when we've been able to identify the source of supply for some of these people have died in overdoses. It's that's one thing I brought up before about the Narcan. Now that it's being administered by family members and everything else, that's going to cut down a degree of our intelligence as to what's going on and the frequency of overdoses and everything else. However, we've done pretty well on keeping in touch with that. I would say that about probably 6-7 years ago, we started seeing an uptick in heroin coming in, a lot of the border issues. And as you know, Steve, we had the We had a DEA museum that we were able to get out here. It was on hiatus, and that's to get the DEA traveling museum out. It's really about $150,000 venture. We were able to get it for free because it was in hiatus. I worked with Bill Alden, who at the time was in charge of all that, and we got that out here. We started holding forums. We tried to get the school field trips there. Didn't have too much luck with that. Had some luck with that, mostly with private schools, but the public school system didn't seem to be all that interested in it. But we did hold some really good forums there.
What is the traveling? Just let everybody know what is the traveling? Is it a big truck, tractor, trailer? What is it?
What it is actually they come in, they set up. We had to get the space. We had to find a building that we could put this in, that we could house this in for, I don't know, I think it was like 3 months or something like that. So we were able to house this in. And I mean, it's almost like if you've ever been to the DEA museum in headquarters or any, DEA museum is really in headquarters. It's not all that big, but it's certainly like Smithsonian level quality, and the traveling museum is pretty close to that. It's small, but it actually hits a lot of the key points that are going on. And at the time, we started seeing heroin was starting to tick up. So we formed a group. We called it the Heroin Operations Team, and it was really a configuration of many stakeholders that were part of that in order to fight this thing. Like I mentioned before about the fentanyl forum that we had a lot of stakeholders there. We even had Chris Herron, which was he had I think it was called Project or Operation Purple or something like that, where he's a former basketball NBA player whose life got destroyed by heroin addiction. And so we were able to get a lot of good things going with that. And then what happened was we started seeing over time that heroin started to get laced with fentanyl. Okay. And then over time, heroin became less and less, and fentanyl became more and more. And as both of you know, I mean, the cost of producing fentanyl is so minuscule. I mean, the chemicals originally were coming from China and going down to Mexico, and the two areas you're talking, Sinaloa cartel and the Jalisco New Generation cartels are the ones that are producing all this stuff. My understanding now is that they're actually producing their own chemicals. So even though China got the ball rolling on that, it's almost exclusively all coming out of Mexico. And you've only got two areas down there really where it's coming out of, but you got porous borders. So the porous borders are bringing it up here. So we're seeing fentanyl up here, not to the degree other people are. However, we did an operation a couple years ago, and I'll think of the name of it in just a minute. And the name of the operation was. It stemmed from the Sinaloa cartel, traversed 7 states, and we actually recovered 2 kilos of fentanyl that were destined for this area that would have killed everybody in this county a couple times.
Everybody.
Yeah. Jeez. So we've been we've been really, really busy with all this and trying to make kids aware. We just finally, now that you have, and I know you're going to get into school stuff, but now that we're kind of moving on beyond this current superintendent and this particular school board, the schools are now wanting to get more engaged with us with regards to providing programs and teaching people about what's going on in the drug issue. And we just finished, I think it was like 5 or 7 different high schools that we went to and it went ahead and addressed with the school system what's going on with the fentanyl problem. It used to be we would get the auditoriums from the school, and I'd get a couple guys from DEA, from Operation Angel's Envy. So you could probably find that in the press. But I would get people from DEA that would come out, and Carl Calder, some of these folks out of the Washington field office, and we'd have more people presenting. We'd have an auditorium. We'd have like 3 people there. We'd have like 5 people presenting. So we couldn't really get the interest up. The only time the interest spikes is if somebody in that school, dies as a result of an overdose, or gets, or there's an identified problem, or you get somebody that's distributing, and all of a sudden all the parents care. But unless they really see something tangible, they tend to not really get all that involved. But we're starting to get them more and more involved because we're working directly with the schools. The last couple of presentations I was at, one had over 100, one had over 50 or 60 or so. So we're doing a lot better now. People are actually taking note of what's going on there, which is extremely important.
It is. And, shame on the school board from back at that time, from the superintendent and the board members, because it didn't matter where you went. just like Morgan said, people find out you're from Loudoun County and they talk about all the crap that was going on there with the school system. When Connie and I moved to Orlando 18 months ago, it was amazing how many messages I got from people, colleagues mostly, like, about time you got out of that shithole up there. And Loudoun is such a nice place.
Hold on. Loudoun is not a shithole, but there were some, you traitorous bastard, you moved to Florida on me. Murph just lived 5 minutes from my house here, but but I do want to get into that a little bit too, because they have made the news. I can tell you too, I'm one of those people. It's like, look, I'm selfish. I want to make sure my county has the best equipment, the best training, because I live here. I've been here 23 years now. And it's so for me, it's very important that we cover these things, but I got to tell you, let's talk about this. Murph and I did an episode on this and we got some hate mail, hate tweets. That's okay, because we took a position. But I want to kind of walk through, because this whole thing with the school board, I'm going to stay out of the CRT stuff because that's kind of like an educational thing.
Right.
But it did create some very contentious board meetings you folks had to handle. But it goes back to, I want to talk about this incident that continues to make the news. I will turn on and I'll hear some news talking about Loudoun County and the assaults, and the other stuff. So let's talk about, because there was a AG investigation on it. Some people are getting charged with perjury because of that. Let's kind of walk through the real story behind this, because I tell you, this happened in my school where my kids went to school. My daughter, it was a few years removed, but those same bathrooms my daughter was in. So let's kind of walk through this thing that is kind of between the CRT and this incident had put Loudoun in the news.
So you had a sexual assault. Well, first of all, the CRT, and you might want to get this book. Ian Pryor just wrote a book, and I just got a copy the other day and started reading through it. And it really does go into the CRT. And not to spend much time on that, but you did have 6 of the school board members there, all from one party, that were all engaged in these email exchanges, these Facebook exchanges, and they wanted to go after anybody that didn't agree with the teaching of critical race theory. And they would say, we're not teaching critical race theory, yet in their own emails they would refer to it as critical race theory. So it's like, well, what are you actually saying here? And if you didn't agree with them, they would go after you, they would dox you and all that.
Dox you, yep.
So what happened was you ended up having this conflict that really started getting pretty elevated. So you had the people that were for critical race theory were going against the folks that were against it. And it got volatile on both sides. And I would always get these calls like, hey, that's a threat. This is, we need to have somebody arrested. I'm like, well, it's got to hit certain levels. It's got to be, pretty specific. And it's, as just trying to identify people based on IP addresses. And then, you got to ensure that was actually the person that was behind the screen. And I mean, there's really a lot that goes into that. So we end up doing a very extensive investigation, working with the FBI on this, a very extensive investigation on this. And I'm getting pressure from both sides on this. How come you're not charging this? I got threatened, and how come you're not charging that? And so what I decided to do was to just go ahead and publish our investigation. Just say, look, you guys, you think I'm favoring one side or favoring the other. I'm not. I'm looking at this across the board and whether or not there's anything that rises to a criminal violation. So we went ahead and we prepared an executive summary, put this on top of the report, redacted what we had to redact, and then released the study. And we did that. So it's like, if you felt like you were being attacked and threatened, by way of email or whatever, that you could actually take this part of the report, go to a magistrate and get a warrant out yourself, So I put it back on the people themselves, which for me was really kind of a good move. And then I remember being interviewed by Cheryl Atkinson, Full Measure. We kind of went into that quite a bit and explained all that. So it really kind of threw it back on the people that were engaged, rather than people expecting me to take one side or the other. And that's the one problem I would say, that when you're politically elected, and it's and we'll get into this, I'm sure in a minute, the difference between being elected versus being appointed. But there are people that expect you in a job like this to take a political stance on something, when once I'm elected, I'm everybody's sheriff, and I've got to stay as apolitical as I can. I'm conservative. I don't deny that. I'm a Republican. I don't deny that. But however, that once you're the job, you're everybody's sheriff, and you've got to.
Well, I never heard any call. Well, you guys responding to a call where the first thing the dispatcher says, "Can you check their voter registration, see if they're RID?" When you're responding to a robbery, you're responding to an accident. There's no checking up. People got to get past this fiction that they're somehow it's politicized, not at the tip of the spear.
Right.
Nashville cops, those guys that did that heroic stuff, stopping that shooter,
Right.
that's got to be a nightmare too. But nobody stopped to check.
Your political affiliation.
So what you saw, Morgan, was you saw the tensions already starting to be elevated here. Okay, so the school board, I think, basically to talk about that, and then you have a guy, Scott Smith, as you know, and his daughter was sexually assaulted by a guy who wore a skirt going into the ladies' room. Well, there's a little more to it than that, and I can't really get into it, the details on that. But all I would say was that the suspect and the victim were known to each other, and so what happened was, in order to validate what had happened there, her claim, we had to get the forensic evidence. We had to get forensic evidence, and we immediately notified the school. They immediately, and quite to the contrary to what Scott Ziegler said publicly, that they didn't know anything about that. He put out an email that very same day.
That's one of the things that came back to haunt him. Is that here's your email that day saying what happened.
So this is what I had to deal with over at the school. Okay, you have a school board that's taking these very activist position on what they're teaching over there, and they don't want to hear anything that's negative. We actually had, when the Attorney General announced that he was going to do a grand jury investigation into this, we had 3 people that were members of our Board of Supervisors got up and walked out. And then all of a sudden, after Scott Ziegler gets indicted, they're like the typical political, oh yeah, well, that's good that they did that, we need to get rid of them. It's like, well, you were the ones that got up and walked out. When you just heard the mention of the fact that the school superintendent and the school board was going to be investigated. So anyway, the tensions were high. We were following up. We did all of the notifications that we're supposed to do, Child Protective Services, the schools, the juvenile court. We did all the notifications. But a lot of that stuff is done. It's certainly at levels below me, but it's all done by either by email, by transmission, by paper, or whatever. And
I read the emails in the paper. I got to tell you, I read Ziegler's response and your responses back to him talking about the role of CPS and how notifications are supposed to go. I mean, folks, email. Here's a pro tip for you folks. If you don't want people to find out about it, don't write an email and don't leave traces all over the frickin' internet.
Well, I'll tell you what, the one thing that upset me, and I actually talked to the Attorney General about this, one thing upset me was that in that, there's like a 25-page grand jury report that came out. There were like 70 attachments there. And there was some indication that I wasn't communicating with Ziegler, and the fact of the matter is first of all, most of the communication that you have in these kinds of assaults are done at levels below. And then it's supposed to go up to the school administration and then by us to the school administration. Okay. But the fact of the matter was I had direct, as you saw, Morgan, I had direct communication with him, several extensive communications, and those, and there was an indication in the report that I wasn't communicating with him. And I went to the Attorney General in my office and I said, hey, look, out of all the documents that were included in that grand jury report, the 2 that I would have liked to have been in there weren't in there. That showed clearly that I was communicating with him, and how the grand jury could have come to that conclusion or come to that assumption that I wasn't communicating was actually false, because you saw there was extensive.
It was in the public record.
So I was kind of like, well, wait a minute, how did that not make the grand jury report? But anyway, overall, the report, 26 pages or whatever, 8 findings, all against the school, nothing against us. We did everything we were supposed to do, all the notifications and all that. So I cringe when I look at what happened with the arrest there. And of course, I've got people like, when that happened, I was actually at a conference in Phoenix, Arizona, National Sheriff's Conference in Phoenix, Arizona.
And you mentioned the arrest. Give people contact when you say the arrest.
Okay, yeah. So it's Scott Smith. So Scott Smith gets into a little pushing and shoving match.
Which is the father of the girl who, by the way, we want people to know this is not conjecture anymore. The youth, the man, the kid was convicted. He was charged or found guilty of these offenses. So this is settled case already. That's right.
So Scott Smith and a neighbor get into it a little bit. And Scott Smith's daughter was the one who was sexually assaulted. So they get into it with this neighbor, and a little pushing and shoving goes on. Our guys go to try to break it up, and Scott ends up pushing one of our deputies, and this deputy takes him down for disorderly conduct. Things were starting to get out of hand. People were, so he did what he was supposed to do. He made an arrest, and anybody that was there will tell you that, and even Scott Smith will probably tell you that, things were getting out of hand. So I don't think he was all that upset about being arrested. The other guy was, and I'll get into that in a minute. But so Scott Smith gets arrested there, and and of course that's the scene that makes the national news. And I'm over in Phoenix, Arizona, and I get this call from WMAL, because I periodically go on WMAL.
Are you with Larry Connor or Vince? Or
Larry O'Connor. So, and it's a 3-hour time difference. So like, hey, Sheriff, we got some questions. We need you to explain some things. I'm like, oh God. And I'm just seeing it on TV like everybody else. And I'm calling my guys, what happened here? Can you tell me what happened here? So they tell me. They tried to, he got disorderly. Then they tried to clear the room, and this other guy, John Tigas, wouldn't leave. And he wanted to get arrested. He's got a place out there in Hamilton. I think he wanted the notoriety of getting arrested because he refused to leave. And the judge, in the ultimate, even though his case got dismissed on an appeal, the judge on that particular case said no. The sheriff's office did what they were supposed to do. They acted appropriately. So that was not a problem on us.
But Mike, I got to tell you, you talk about the optics of it. When is the last time you heard of a Commonwealth's attorney getting involved in a disorderly conduct case and prosecuting it themselves?
Well, what I find really ironic about that is that she put out a memo, as you probably know, back in January, that says they're not going to prosecute any misdemeanor cases, and yet she's the one that sat on 2 misdemeanor, a disorderly conduct, when Tiggs refused to leave. So you had a trespass. So those are 2 misdemeanor cases that she personally prosecuted. Yet, if there's a political aspect to it, she'll prosecute it. That's an activist Commonwealth attorney for you. Where, like when I was telling you before, is like, I don't do any of the activist stuff. I mean, I'll go to, I'll support candidates, and it's rare that I even give endorsements, but I'll support candidates that I believe in, that have proven to me that they're a good fit for a particular. But I don't get into all this activism and marching and all this other kind of stuff that some of these other people do. Well, she does, and instead of being a legitimate conscientious prosecutor when it comes to criminal law and the U.S. Constitution and the Virginia Constitution, she uses that as a political forum to make a political statement, and I just think that's wrong. And I kind of suspect when she put that notice out there in January about not prosecuting misdemeanors, I think that was a political move to lock in her base there. And it was a quick retraction. Well, that memo was released without my approval. That was no, nothing like that at that level gets released without the approval of the boss. I don't care. It's like putting out a memo from the White House. Well, the president says. Well, unless the president says that, you kind of got a problem. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what I've tried to do, and of course, even some of the Democrats on the board came in against her, and I sent her an email and said, look, I want to know specifically, because then she walked it back in a meeting with some of our people, but she didn't walk it back in writing. So I said, look, I want in writing. I want to know exactly what you will and what you won't prosecute. I don't want to hear, you're going to tell us one thing, or you're going to tell somebody else something else. I need to know specifically what it is that you will and you won't prosecute. So anyway, so that's a difficulty that we've had with her office. I mean, we haven't stopped doing our job. I went to Ashby Ponds the other day, and I talked to a group down there, and I said, look, because they asked about that. I said, we certainly have our problems there. Her staff has turned over 1.5 times since she's been there. So that means that everybody that worked in the Commonwealth Attorney's office before under Jim Plowman had already left, and then everybody that she's hired had left, and she's on her 3rd round in 3 years of prosecutors there. So you have both a willingness to prosecute cases problem, and you've got an administrative organizational management problem. So you all across the board, there's problems with that office, and this is what we have to deal with. All we want to do is make sure we're doing everything that we can to keep the county safe, and a lot of that has to do with putting people in jail. If you're a violent criminal, we want to put you in jail. We don't want you on an ankle monitor or whatever. We want you in jail so we don't have to worry about you going out and hitting your wife with a claw hammer handle or something.
Well, we've interviewed some guys like Dominic Polifro, and he knows some guys. I got a guy. Dominic was a guy who did the Richard Kuklinski, the Iceman and stuff. So Michael Franzese, we actually interviewed a former capo regime of the Colombo crime family. Okay. We know people. We know they all their names in a Naval too. Sure. Murphy ends in Naval too. Are you part of the Irish mob, Murphy?
I have no comment on that, Your Honor.
Yeah. Well, but these are interesting. I don't know if there's an old Chinese proverb that says, "May you live in interesting times." But these are interesting times we're in, because what I'm seeing is, like you, Murph and I, this is probably the most political we've ever been on a podcast discuss because we pretty much say we don't get into it. But I think it's important to talk about this because there's two things I want to talk to you about. It's really about the accountability because I think people vote what they really want, and you get what you vote, right? Elections have consequences. So the reason I want to talk about is why this recent move that I think you guys did a really good job of tamping down, of trying to change the police department or the sheriff's office into a police department like Fairfax County Police. I want you to talk about that, but I also want you to talk about it from the aspect of why we can't, this whole thing of defund police, these things have real consequences in communities. And I think the voters made it very clear in your last election. Overwhelmingly in a county that was turning blue, going blue, almost the whole county board ended up being Democrat. You had a resounding victory. And I think it's because people said, we don't want this defund this stuff. We want to be safe in Loudoun County. So kind of walk through structurally in the Virginia, being kind of a home rule state, what's the importance of having a constitutional officer like sheriff versus turning it into a county police department?
So you have to understand that we're in an unusual area here. We're in Northern Virginia, and because of Northern Virginia, it's not common throughout the country. But if you grow up in the Washington, D.C. area, you see these county police departments in Montgomery County, Howard County, Prince William County, Prince George's County.
Prince George's,
County. And so there's this assumption that that's kind of normal. I grew up thinking that, everybody has a county police department. It's pretty rare, actually, when you look across the country. So we're kind of like the old traditional model here. What happened was over time, so I think it was that 60 or 70 years ago that Fairfax County changed their form of government, which is a strong form of government, which would give a county executive more power to do a lot of these things than our county executive, who's a county administrator, has, because the county administrator is appointed and answers directly to the board of supervisors. So the chairman of the board, in this case, the chairwoman of the board, has a majority vote. She pretty much runs the county. Okay, so and she runs the county administration, and they have to do what she wants, or they're out of a job. So we have a different form of government than Prince William, than Fairfax County, and all that. But what bothered the chairwoman of the board was the fact that I came in against her on a couple things during the that she wanted to do. She wanted to spend $20 million to form a new emergency communications center when ours was already brand new. We were already working with each other. And I thought, wait a minute, why do we need to spend that money when we could just dual train our people rather than we're already working together over there. All we got to do is make sure that they both know how to handle calls. And she was upset about that. She was upset that I disagreed with that, because they wanted to have all my people report to the county and come under the county administration in dispatch. And what that would have meant was, even though they report and do everything in the direction of the county, if anything goes wrong, I'm the one to blame. Okay, I get the fallout from that, not them. So I disagreed with that, and so she was not happy about that. So she decided that she's going to make a police department here so that she can control a police chief. And what you're seeing here, and you don't have to go far. I mean, you got to look at some of the counties that surround us. Look at what happened a couple of years ago in Fairfax County with the officer there, Timberlake, who used a taser on somebody, and the chief at the time gets right on with Toscano, another George Soros funded Commonwealth attorney, like Buda Biberai, and immediately holds a press conference the very next day. And not only do they don't even say we're going to investigate, they're already charging their police officer with assault on using a taser, which was, certainly, if you looked at the video, there's certainly two sides of that argument there. At least investigate this thing first. And so that really killed the morale of those folks there. But what it has to do with is that the chiefs here, the chiefs have to answer to whoever appointed them, whether it's a mayor, a county executive, a board of supervisors, whatever the case is. And what's happened now is the agendas have gotten so political that you can have chiefs that have enormous qualifications, extensive, training and extensive education and background and experience, but they have to answer to politicians that don't know a thing about what we do and how we do it. And whatever seems to be topical at the time, politically advantageous at the time, is where the boards go, is where the mayors go, and all that. And if you're a chief and you don't do what you're told to do, hey, you're out of a job. We're going to get somebody that will do what we tell them to do. So big problem there. So the thing is with being elected, and we're the largest full service sheriff's office in all of Virginia. So we have about 800 people. We have a jail, the courts. We handle civil issues. We also handle all the enforcement. We got investigators, crime scene experts, motorcycles. We got it all. Okay, so we are basically the equivalent of a police department and a sheriff's office all wrapped in one, which actually is quite good because we have a standing 8:30 meeting every morning with our command staff where everybody sits at the table. Usually they go about an hour and a half. We talk about everything that's going on.
Kind of a version of CompStat. Yeah.
It does, and it actually gets everybody. Because there are things that happen at the jail that impact us in enforcement. There are things that happen at the court that might impact the jail, vice versa. So it's nice to kick everything around what the important issues of the day are, go through it and make sure we're not missing anything, but it also keeps everything under one roof. I've been in enforcement my whole life. And so I never really worried about much after I lock somebody up. We lock them up and try to get a good sentence on them. And that was the end of it.
It was then the U.S. attorney, the U.S. marshals, everybody else takes care of everything else.
Exactly. And so what now that I have a jail, it's like, hey, wait a minute. I also got to look at, are we providing the folks that are coming out the right programs that they need to get to go in the right direction so they're not so they don't recidivate. So there's a lot that I never really thought about before I became sheriff that we actually have to do here to try to make sure that we're
kind of one of those things after you got elected, you say, wait a minute, what did I just sign up for? Holy cow.
I'll tell you what, Morgan, and I thought I put a lot of hours in DEA, and I certainly did in public affairs, but throughout my entire DEA career, and honest to God, I have never worked so hard. People,
I know from your 11:45 p.m. email last night saying, what's the link for today? Just fortunately, my plane was late from Chicago. I'm still connected. Here's the link for tomorrow. And you replied at 12:10 a.m. this morning saying, got it.
So this is my retirement job. And so it's not much, it's not much of a retirement job. I can tell you that. I never worked so hard in my life, but I enjoy it. And if I didn't like it, I wouldn't be doing it. I'm enjoying what we're doing. And, but the value of being elected, getting back to your point here, the value about being elected is that we represent the people that we serve directly. I remember, so I still carry my TS and SCI clearances from my time in DEA and Booz Allen, and then getting a re-up when I was here. And I remember FBI agents came out to re-up me. And as you know, Steve, these SF-86s are like 50, 60 pages long, and
mine's not that long. It's like 42 pages, but those 5-year investigations. Hey, what do you think of this guy? Does it, would you trust him? Hell no.
So how long these things are and all the detail you got to put into that. So I have this thing filled out, and the FBI guy investigator comes in and he says, he goes, hey, you got everything filled out here, but there's this block here that you didn't fill out. It says, who do you report to? And I said, well, I actually report to the citizens. He goes, yeah, but who, like in the chain of command, do you report to? And I said,
dude, do you not understand how a sheriff's office works? Who was on your interview board?
I said the citizens. He goes, yeah. He goes, but don't you have like a county administrator? And I said, we do. And I work with him, and I work with the board of supervisors, but I don't report to him. And he goes, well, I don't know what to put in this block. I said, well, look, give me a couple of days and I'll get you all 400,000 names, but it's going to take me a few days, So he didn't know.
Here's a link to the voter rolls. Go have yourself.
But getting back to your question, that's the advantage here. I tell people ask me that, and I say, you're the boss. When I'm out there, the citizens say, you're the boss. We listen to everything that they have to say. Every single morning I get emails. I'm part of the email system that every complaint that comes in, I see, every compliment that comes in, I see. So I see everything that comes in, and I either assign it. Sometimes I'll pick the phone up and call myself and say, hey, I saw you complain about this. Let me explain why we do this or do that. And generally the complaints are pretty small. It's like, hey, somebody parked the wrong direction, on my street, or they're blocking my driveway or whatever. But we get about 4 compliments to every complaint. So generally speaking, there's probably less than a half a dozen complaints that came in that we really had to assign to IA to look into, but and that's over like a 12-year span. So generally speaking, they're pretty minor things, but the fact of the matter is that I see it, and people. It's
perception. It's what people perceive.
And I think about everybody in this county has my cell phone number, and I think everybody in this county has my email address. So I get stuff like all day and all night long, as you mentioned there,
Yeah, you got that. I see that phone is plugged into a Tesla battery. You got that thing constantly charging.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it's insane. But the thing is that it's the responsiveness that we have, and it's because of that and our community engagement that we do so well. And that's why when you look at our approval ratings, we generally, last time they rated us in 5 different categories, we rated from 87 to 97%. So you average about 93% or so citizen satisfaction rating. Our internally, when IACP did the study, okay, so Phyllis Randall commissions a study because what happened was back in July 2020. They were going to slip this thing onto the board for referendum. I didn't think it was coming because it was taking so long. I didn't think it was coming. Well, it did. And fortunately, we had spent a year doing our own internal study, which was about 100 pages long with about a 3-page bibliography. It was very, very objective. And so we dropped that. And as you know, Morgan, we sent things countywide here so people could see exactly what was going on.
Oh, I read the report.
They tried to slip this in, so they didn't like their report, and it gave them pause. So they didn't go ahead and take this to referendum, which would have been, they would have had the votes to do it if it was the time to do it. That would have been it. So they decide then they want to do a study. They want to hire a consultant to do a study. They get IACP comes in, does a study, and IACP comes in after about an 8-month study. They come in and say, look. Not only are you having more success with the job that you're doing here at Loudoun County Sheriff's Office than anybody in the area, your response times are as good or better than everybody else. Your follow-up is better than everybody else. Your case closure rates are higher than everybody else. Your citizen satisfaction ratings are higher than anybody else. Even your internal ratings, your employee ratings were at 89%. So I take that number against anybody, any law enforcement organization right now, but certainly even the private sector. You talk about 89% of internal approval rating by your employees is pretty phenomenal, So, and then we're doing all this, and then
in North Korea, I heard it's 100% for Kim Jong Un.
Yeah, you're right. Right. Well, if you take them out of the equation, I think
it's down to 1%. Yeah,
I think we're standing pretty good. So, but it was. So we had it was a pretty successful for us. And they said, oh, by the way, you're about 79 positions short. So we actually were able to use that study to our advantage then when we came in and asked for positions. Usually when I ask for positions, I get hammered like crazy. Why do you need this? Why do you need that? And a couple of years ago, I usually ask for about, 4 or 5, maybe 6 deputies. And I get hammered. What do you need this? And don't you have this? And can't you move somebody here and do this and do that? So a couple of years ago, I asked for a cook for the jail. Okay, I got 1 cook. And if that guy's sick, they still got to eat, So I asked for a cook at the jail. And the board hammers me. Why do you need a cook at the jail? And then they coined it cooks for crooks. And so it was a big joke. And so I go into next year, I asked for a cook. They won't give it to me. It's like a $50,000 a year job. So I'm like, well, I need a cook. So they won't give it to me the next year. They won't give it to me. They all laugh, cooks for crooks. I go in a third year and I don't ask for anything except for a cook. So they're like, why are you asking for a cook? And I said, last couple of times you coined it cooks for crooks, and I see a couple of you on the board smirking. And I said, it may be funny. I said, but the fact of the matter is our inmates, they actually need to eat, and we need to have a second cook there. And I said, if I can't get a $50,000 a year cook, why would I ask for anything else? Then they take a recess and they come back and they start throwing positions at me. They're like, don't you need a couple more traffic people? Don't you need a couple more of this, couple more of that? So a little reverse psychology worked that time. So this time we were able to take the report that we had from IACP and said, look, we're 79 people short. We're only asking for 36. So we're gonna split that number. We're only asking for 36. And that's, so we got that approved, although there's one supervisor there that wants to challenge that still. So we'll see what happens next week on that. But I think we're pretty solid. So we were able to use that study that they were trying to use against us so that they could show that we were inefficient. That'd be better make a.
But Mike, people don't realize they thought they went, because IACP folks stands for the International Association of Chiefs of Police. You think that would have been very favorable to say, yeah, you need another police agency. Mm-hmm. The IACP came back and said, not only do you not need another agency, things are working fine. It's going to cost you, I think it was north of 45 or 50 million to transition a department
over a 10-year period, 300 million. And they said, it's not going to make anything any better. Your people are trained exactly the same as they would be trained if you were a police department. We go to the same training. All your ratings are higher than everybody else around. And all it would do would be to cause disruption. And all it would do basically would give the power of the, would be a power grab by the chairman of
you would put a buffer.
Right.
You would put a buffer between your accountability between the public and the person who's serving them. That's why I'm a big fan of sheriffs. When I was a trooper, worked a lot with sheriffs. They were very accountable to the public. I'll tell you who loved the sheriffs was the posse comitatus, because they didn't believe in anybody except a constitutionally elected officer. So
that's right.
I remember when the county commission was going to have their meeting to really vote, and then they didn't. They had a Back the Blue rally there at the courthouse in Leesburg, and I came down, and it was very, very encouraging to see how many people showed up there to support you and the sheriff's department.
They did. Our people, we got the best. I mean, honestly, it's a great county. There are some things that really need some work here, and I think honestly, with the school.
Why did you look at me when you said that?
We all do, Morgan.
The school board is going to be, every one of them is going to be out, and so you're going to have a new superintendent. You're going to have an entirely new school board. So I think that's really, if you need to repair something, that's it. Public safety. I think people take it for granted that we have such good success. They don't realize how hard our folks work and how stretched we are. But we do it because we take the time. Our citizen engagement is got to be better than everybody around us, because we really are. It's all about community policing here.
Well, if you had gotten the positions that were commensurate with the growth of the county, I mean, your agency might be 25% bigger. I mean, Loudoun County for several years was the fastest growing county in the United States. Well, the only reason it's not is because the math doesn't work out, from a number standpoint. But let's close out with the final few minutes here. Let's talk about your approach has been to this defund the police and the impact it is, and how you guys, because to your point, crime has gone down, even though murder was at 100-year highest homicide rate in recorded history.
Right.
We're not, I feel it's like I pinch myself. I go, why are we not feeling this? We've got the metro coming out here now,
right.
That's new. So let's finish up the last few minutes just talking about your approach, your philosophy around why the defund the police isn't going to work, especially in an area like this.
So I think what you look at is we kind of live in a bubble here, and it's because I think we take and it all has to do with all the things I said before about what ICP came back with and said, look, you're doing all these things, and our community engagement is second to none. And honestly, that has a lot to do with the fact that I'm elected, because if, quite frankly, Morgan, if people don't like what I'm doing, I'm out of a job, and I want to make sure that I'm doing everything I can.
As an R in a trending blue county, the fact that you got elected with those numbers again tells people they vote for what they want. They want public safety.
Yeah. And you feel like, and even the last time, there was a lot of folks in this county that are really anti-Trump and still voted for me, even though I was on the Republican side of the ticket, because we really are apolitical. But what we do is we really take an interest in the citizens that we serve, and that's a real credit. That's a real credit to the people that work here and the expectation that's here. We strive for excellence. We've had more people that have gone and advanced their education here than ever in the past. We have people that look at this job. We've actually had, we had my undersheriff just got the police chief job in Sugar Land, Texas. I have another major that just got the deputy chief job. And
that is a rough job down there. My wife's cousins, he made a bunch of money in the oil business. He's got Sugar Land is a high rent area, my friend.
Not sugar. It's not sugary. It's not sweet, is it?
So you have that, and I had one that just went down to to be the assistant chief at Alexandria, different retirement system. So that was the motive for the most part to go. But you have that, and I had one that so that's two chiefs. I had another. Greg Brown was the chief of Leesburg. So we're doing very well. You would have never seen a decade ago people leaving sheriff's offices to become police chiefs. And now it's going the other way around. I mean, we've had more people that have left police departments. We've had over a dozen that came from Prince William County to work for us here. We've had probably 6 or 7, maybe more, from Fairfax County, about 8 or so from Washington, D.C., because they feel like they can't do their job or get the backing that they need because everything is so politicized in those areas. And in here, since I answer directly to the people, we can stand up for our people. I don't have to sit there and bend with the wind based on somebody having a political agenda that they want to force down my throat. Well, no, we do what's right. We have somebody that does something wrong, we investigate it. We find what's wrong. If there was anything wrong, and we punish it. We don't go do a press conference about it. We just handle it, and those are the kinds of things that we don't try to make a political statement of what we do. We just try to do the right thing here. And I think that's the difference here that you find. And when you're right, Steve, all those people came out because they like the service that they're getting here. We had a really good turnout there. I appreciate you coming out there. It was a really good turnout, and they really balked. I mean, it really caused them to balk. I remember Caleb Kirshner, all the emails that they got that were against the police department, and I remember Caleb Kirshner pinches his fingers about a quarter inch and says, "These are the ones that I got for a police department." And then he pulls out all the emails that he got. That was a stack that he had to hold between his hands. That was about 6 inches deep, and said, "These are all the ones that want to keep at a sheriff's office." And then one of the other board of supervisors says, "Oh, that was a waste of paper and to print all that out." And he says, "Don't worry about it. It's recyclable." So this is the kind of political garbage that you got to deal with in a job like this. But honestly, to me, it's worth it because of the service that we can give the citizens here. And that really is a credit. When you have all these people, like just last year, okay, so we got Deputy of the Year, so over 100 sheriff's offices in all of Virginia. So we got Deputy of the Year, Criminal Investigator of the Year, Dispatcher of the Year, and then as you mentioned, Gloria Turin, our jailer over there, works at the Adult Detention Center. She got Correctional Officer of the Year from major counties, and then a few weeks ago, I got National Sheriff of the Year. So whatever we're doing, we're doing right. We're lucky. We got a great team. We're in the right direction, and I think people see that. I think they see that we really care about what we do, and we care about the citizens we serve.
And there's about 3,200 sheriffs out there too. So that's a great honor to be elected like that. So look,
that's impressive.
Yeah.
Hey, we got to bring this to a close. So final thoughts, what's you've been elected to 3 terms. You're going for 4?
That's right. I am. I announced we're doing good. We're looking forward to it. And we every time we run a campaign, it's like we always run like we're coming from behind, and whoever they put up against me, we'll be ready for it. And we always are. So,
well, your records, I tell you, as a Loudoun County resident, your record speaks for itself. So,
and as a former, I spent a total of 17 years living in Loudoun County, and was there for up until 18 months ago when, as you got elected,
traitorous bastard and left me. Yeah,
very proud. I mean, when you did that report on your first 100 days in office, I thought that was phenomenal. I read what you wrote up about that, the progress that you were making in 3 freaking months was outstanding. I think the citizens of Loudoun County are being more than adequately served by you and your office there. You guys don't know how good you have it. Loudoun County is a beautiful place. The politics.
Well, you should have stayed, Murph. You should have stayed.
I kept trying to get them to turn the thermostat up there, and they just wouldn't do it. I thought, screw this winter, I'm heading south. But so proud of what you've accomplished, Mike. Glad to call you my friend. Glad to call you a brother, law enforcement officer there. And I'm sorry that you have Morgan still living in your county.
He's tried to get rid of me. I own property. You can't get rid of me that easy.
Well, I mean, honestly, it's an honor for me to talk with you guys. You guys are experts in your field there, and I'm enjoying it. What I'm doing, my kids are always asking me, "Dad, when are you going to retire?" My daughter, she graduates at Naval Academy. She's going to flight school. I got my son is an FBI agent now. He's an Air Force Academy grad. I still got a son, another Naval Academy son who's.
Wait a minute. Where is the Army in all of this? Come on. Where's West Point?
I told my daughter this. I said, so I had a son that graduated Naval Academy, one graduated Coast Guard Academy, and one graduated Air Force Academy. I told my daughter, I said, Molly, if you go to the military academy, you go to West Point, we'll probably be the only family in history that had 4 siblings go to every one of the different academies. And she says, I said, that would probably be a record. And she says, Dad, you already had 3. I think you probably already got the record.
I tell you, I'm glad you brought up your family, because you have a service-oriented family that
amazing.
We would all be proud of.
Yeah, I'm blessed. And I tell you what, the credit, I'm always working, as you know. The key, like you see in my emails and my text at 12:30 at night. So all the credit on that goes to my wife. I mean, she's the one that she's really taking care of this family and made sure everybody got in the right direction. So I was the one always working and bringing home the bread, and she was the one always taking care of the family. So all the credit and all the success goes to her and these kids. I mean, I'm blessed. God's been good to me, and we're just going to keep on moving forward.
God bless you, brother. Proud of you.
All I can say is go Army, beat Navy. Just tell that to your kids.
Well, actually, she just did a video. I'll send it to you. She just did a video interview there. She's the captain of the track team. She's a high jumper, triple jumper, long jumper. Captain of the track team. She's got holds a couple of records over there at Navy, or pretty close to holding records. She's always either coming in first or second in one of those events. I'll send you the interview that she did. She's the captain. They actually are going against Army on Saturday. So on Saturday, I'll be at Navy, at their indoor stadium there, rooting her on. So I'll be thinking about you there, Morgan.
Yeah, we're rooting for Molly.
Yeah. Hey, look, this is us saluting you. We're going to bring this to a close because I know you got to go solve crime, protect the innocent, make Loudoun County safe for us. But look, great stuff. A lot of insight that I think a lot of people get. And this is us saluting you, saying thank you once again for doing a great job.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, and appreciate all you guys are doing to get the word out here. We really need to get the word out about what we're doing in law enforcement. People need to understand how difficult this job is and what we have to do, and how many people every day are putting their lives on the line for people they don't even know, and how important that is to the citizens that we serve.
Good job, brother. Keep it up.
All right. You guys don't go anywhere else. Everybody else, stay tuned for the debrief. Like I said, I'm fortunate to live in the county. We've got it good here, considering the fact we're 500,000 people. We've been the fastest growing county in the United States, like 10 out of the last 15 years. 80% of the world's internet traffic goes through Loudoun County. We're right at Dulles Airport, where 4 of the hijackers operated out of. I mean, a lot of stuff going on here, but still, I feel, let me tell you what, I feel safer walking around here in my skivvies in the middle of the night than I would fully armed in Washington, D.C. in the middle of the day.
Or in the Catholic Church.
Apparently.
I'm sorry. I should have said that. But just the thought of you walking around your skivvies, I think I might skip dinner tonight now. It's just
that's part of my diet plan for you, Murph.
That's one of those pictures in your mind that will never go away.
Yeah, but I mean, that was a good, but you know what? I mean, and you think about it, the chief of DEA public affairs, he had to know everything that was going on. He had to be answerable to the media, to his boss, to Congress, to everybody else. And you know what? I think that was the training that allowed him to do what he's doing now and handle it. Because as a constitutional officer, if you heard the county board here was trying to turn this into a police department. And I think that's pretty much been squelched when they looked at not only the cost, but the people don't want it. The people don't want a police department. They don't want to be Fairfax or Prince William. They want a sheriff's office. Yep. And I think it's going to stay that way. And
it gives them accountability because it's an elected position. You can hold those that you elect accountable. Well, theoretically, but in this case, Mike takes it very serious. It was an honor to have you on here, Mike. Thank you very much, brother. We were in Miami together back in the 1980s, working DEA, and then our career paths took different paths or took different countries, and then he ends up working for Javier in the end. So that's pretty cool the way his whole career went. He couldn't get away from us.
It was kind of funny too because he's in the south of Pakistan when I was not at the same time, but I was in the north, and it's kind of like his discussion of being in Karachi and stuff. That was an interesting time working out of the consulate down there. Very interesting country.
Well, and he flies back in to find out they have to evacuate the next day. Now that's what you call Murphy's Law.
But look at the frequent flyer points he got.
Well, that's true.
Well, hey, if you guys like that episode, and we hope you do, like I said, this is as close as we probably get to being political, but only because we're asking questions about somebody who's a political person. By definition, he runs for office every 4 years. But I think it's interesting getting behind the scenes of what was really happening, what was going on with some of the biggest controversies that were actually hitting the U.S. at that time. So we hope you guys enjoy it. If you do, go on over to Apple and Spotify, hit those 5 stars, 5 estrellas, as Murph said. We don't know exactly how it works. It's David Blaine. By the way, I got to tell you, you want to see one of the most amazing tricks? David Blaine did it to Harrison Ford.
What's that?
He took a deck of cards. He said, just think of card. Are you thinking of it? It says, now, that card now has just disappeared. Now look through the deck. And Harrison Ford looks through there, and whatever card he was thinking of wasn't there. And he says, hand me a fruit, hand me an orange. Harrison Ford picks up a fruit from his kitchen. It's an orange. And he tells us, what was your card? He goes, it's the 9 of hearts. They cut open the orange, rolled up into a card. Inside that orange is the frickin' 9 of hearts.
No.
Telling you, go look at it on YouTube. David Blaine and Harrison Ford. And if that's the magic I'm talking about when you hit those 5 star stores. Anyway, small digression. That's drinking game. So you guys head on over and drink there. Head on over to gameofcrimespodcast.com for more information about the show. We post a lot of stuff there, including our books. Follow us on social media at Game of Crimes on Twitter, at Game of Crimes Podcast on Facebook and the Instagram. but also make sure you head on over to Patreon. Patreon.com/Game of Crimes. We have got a ton of stuff coming out. We did the movie The French Connection in honor of Pete Charette, who was episode 92. So that was a great, one of the worst movies we ever reviewed.
But it was great. The Pete's interview was excellent.
Pete's interview was excellent, much better than the movie. But guess what? It got 5 Academy Awards. So who am I to talk, right?
Yep.
And also, just make sure you do that and listen to the content, folks. We got a lot of good stuff on there. We dive deep into cases. We give you the stuff nobody else is talking about. We keep it drama free. We're not into the drama. We're in about the facts, like the Murdoch case. We get into the technical aspects. How did they really track them down? We talk about the shooting in Tennessee. That was one of our things we talked about with our Warden of the Throne folks. We analyzed the details behind the shooting. What was textbook, what was done. So you guys stay tuned. Could be some interesting stuff coming out of there. But again, Murph, I just think we just knocked it out of the park again, episode 93 with Mike Chapman. I feel like it's time for a glass of wine, which you don't drink. I'll drink your wine, or a beer, which you don't drink. I'll have your beer too.
Well, I appreciate you taking one for the team there, brother.
Dude, you have ginger ale, and we'll all call you a snitch, okay?
Hey, y'all, thank you, and thanks, Mike, again, and thank y'all for listening to us here on the Game of Crimes.
And thank you guys once again for playing the biggest, baddest, most outrageous, and dangerous game of all, the Game of Crimes.